All right, in this episode of the Camaro restoration, I'm going to start tearing this car down. And I've been waiting for this for a long time. I've had some delays. I appreciate you guys being patient with me. And I've been going back and forth between the block and working on the block and getting this ready to be torn down. So I couldn't just start ripping into it. I had to get the garage cleaned up. I had to get my Jeep, unfortunately, out with a cover on it and the elements, which I'm not very happy about, but I just don't have enough space to keep the Jeep in the garage or have another place to keep the Jeep. So the Jeep's outside. Camaro, I cleaned out the garage, the Camaro's backed in, and my kind of plan of attack is to start out with taking the battery out, right, for safety, and then I want to take the hood off and the front nose, the front bumper, and then the front fenders, and at least start there, pull the engine out, transmission, and get that out of the way, and then go from there. So, like I said, there's been some delays getting to this point, but I'm finally here. I'm excited about it. Let's get into it. All right, I'm going to start out with taking this battery off, and I have to remove this fender brace and get this thing out of the way. So there's the fender brace, 2 9/16 bolts. All right, so I know this goes without saying, but it's definitely a good idea to bag and tag all your parts as you remove them. I know this is a pain to do, and a lot of us don't do that, but I learned a lesson from my Jeep to make sure I bag and tag everything. So I picked up these Salimo. There's 120 quart bags in here, and they have a little zipper on them. I got these on Amazon for about $8, so pretty fair price for that, and to me, well worth it. So there's my right front fender brace bolts, and I'll keep that in the box, and then I'm also going to label the box fender brace right. There are going to be a lot of parts to this thing, and I'm not as familiar with the Camaro as I am, let's say, with my Jeep, so this is going to help keep me organized. All right, so underneath the hood, you've got your under hood light, if you still have it. You've got 2 1/4-inch bolts, screws that hold that in. And then you've got your windshield washer, your windshield wiper washers that spray right there and are held in there by a 5/16. So that's going to be on both sides. We're going to take those off, and then we'll be ready to unbolt the hood from the hinges. All right, so in order to get the hood off, you just have to undo one bolt there, one there. So there's essentially 2 bolts on each hood hinge, and highly recommended to get 2 people to do this, because this is it's a pretty heavy hood, and it's a little awkward for, well, it's pretty awkward for one person to handle. And your trouble spots tend to be right here, and I'm going to put a cloth around this and have my hand here as I unbolt the hood hinges, and I'm going to do my best to film this, and I'm actually waiting on my buddy Shane from across the street to come over and help me get this hood off. All right, so there's Shane over there. We got his side out. We got 1 bolt holding this hood on, and we're about to take that one out. Let's see how it goes. All right, well, that hood came off actually a lot easier than what I thought it would. And again, appreciate it, Shane. Very helpful to have a buddy here. So one of the things I didn't do is, a lot of guys will, mark the location of the bolts, not only on where it bolts to the hood, but on your hood hinge where it bolts to the fender. And that way you can line it up whenever you reassemble it. And I did not do that, and I didn't do it intentionally because this hood isn't lined up very well. It's too far towards the front windshield, in my opinion, and the body lines aren't great on it, so we got to readjust that anyway, so that's why I didn't mark it up. So now with the hood out of the way, it really opens things up. It really makes it easier to get to some stuff. So I'm going to take these hood hinges off, and then I'm going to start on the front end. All right, so these hood hinges aren't that bad. There's a bolt there. That one is a little bit tricky to get to. and this one here. So 2 bolts into the fender that hold those on. This one's a little trickier to get to because of the heater box there. And the one on that side, pretty easy. So 4 bolts, and those things are off. Now we'll move on to the nose, the front end here. All right, now that the hood is out of the way and the hood hinges are off, I'm going to start on this front end. And I think I'm going to start with the headlights, the marker lights, this grill, and then also the hood release, this part right here. So if I get this piece out of here and that grill out of there, it really kind of opens up this whole area down here, so I can kind of see what I'm up against as far as how this thing attaches and what I got to take off. So I'm going to start there. Okay, so I took the bolts out here, 2 here, and then 2 here, and I thought this whole thing would just kind of pop out, but it's attached to that brace down there. And the best I can tell, and you're not going to probably be able to see this with the GoPro, but there is 1 bolt holding it on the left, and then you can see the threads of one directly below you there. Let me see if I can. So there's the threads of the one, and then there's the one over there, the bolt head you can see, and then on this side you can see the threads. And that may be everything that's holding it, but there could be something under here. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to get that one, and then we'll go from there. All right, so those 2 bolts underneath did the trick, and I'll show it to you. I just got to kind of set in there to get the orientation for when I put it back together. But and I had to drop this piece down through the bottom. And you'll also notice too that this is the manual hood latch, and mine is broken at the bottom. So there's an extension piece that comes out that I don't have. So I may end up replacing that part there. I'm not sure yet. All right, and this support piece was in there. I had to undo that bolt at the bottom. The one that was sticking up right there, you can see, still sticking up. I had just kind of pulled off the bottom of the hood nose there. The hole was kind of wallered out, and I couldn't, just popped out. So that was the bolt holding that on. And then it bolts to the hood release right there. So that's what that looks like. One step closer. All right, so next up is the headlight and marker lights, and there's 4 screws that hold these in. And once you pull this black thing out, it's chrome on most cars. You're going to have some some screws that hold the headlight on, and you pull those out, and those screws also attach to your fender, so you're also getting those out of the way to take your fender off. All right, so this is pretty basic, so I'm probably not going to film this part, and I'll be right back. All right, so I stand corrected. There aren't any screws that hold the headlight in. I thought there were, or maybe there should be, and there's just not on my car. I don't know. But there's a spring, and it's held in by that spring in that hole right there, and that's what provides tension to keep your headlight in, along with the the bezel that goes over the front there. And there's the 42-year-old wiring clip. Oh, look, just fell apart. So even more reason to rewire this car. This stuff's just about had it. 42 years old. All right, so the driver's side headlight, kind of solved the mystery for me. And what I did with the first headlight is the whole housing just kind of fell out. I didn't, it just kind of came out. I didn't do that on purpose. And this one is in there pretty solid, so I'm going to leave that one in. I'll probably have to see if I can repurpose that one and get it to fit. If not, I'll have to pick up a new one, but that's how it should look. And got all the lights out. All right, next up is to get this grill out of here. All right, so far so good. I got the lights out, which were fairly easy to do, and then the grill pretty much just kind of fell out. It wasn't secured in very well, but that really opens that up. So let me show you what I want to do next to get this nose piece off. All right, so just to give you an orientation, there's the windshield, there's the engine, there's the front of the car, and along this ridge right here, I know it's a little bit dark with the way the sun is shading, there's screws right here, and they're all along this ridge right here, and they go all the way down to the end. So the next thing I'm going to do is take those out and see what that does. All right, so I got the all those screws off that front lip there, and nothing happened. And I guess I kind of thought, oh, okay, it's just going to come off when I take those off, but no such luck. But you can see, if you look through, there's the threads of a screw or a bolt coming through, and then you're probably not going to be able to see them, but in these corners here, there's a bolt under there, a bolt in there, and a bolt in there, and I've got to get those off. In addition to that, on the opposite side where the battery tray mounts, that threaded bolt that you can see there is from the battery tray. So I've got to go in to the other side and remove a lot of what I think are the fender bolts, and get those off. So I got to get 3 bolts off from this side, and then 5 or 6 off from the other side, including the battery tray. And let me show you what that looks like. All right, I know the lighting is not very good, but there's a bolt head there, and that's the one that you can see from the other side. And this is the other bolt that holds the battery tray on right there. And then there's a bunch of bolts. Hang on, let me get a light. All right, so right there is the battery tray, and then these are all the fender bolts. And they're kind of up under that corner there by the headlight. And I've got to take those off because they come through the other side, and I believe that that's part of what is holding on this front nose piece. So I'm going to unbolt all those bolts and see where that gets me. All right, so what I just did was remove the battery tray, 2 half-inch bolts, and mine were kind of a pain because battery tray is kind of rusted, and not uncommon, but this is a California car, and I don't think this car has a lot of rust, if any, on it, and that's the only rust I've been able to see. And I'm going to shine a flashlight in here because it's kind of dark, but underneath looks pretty good. And the reason I took the battery tray out is because there's 2 bolts, one there and one there, that you got to get out that's holding this front bumper cover on. So I'm going to take those 2 bolts out and go from there. All right, so I got those 2 bolts out that were below the battery tray right there, and I'm actually starting to get a little bit of movement here, not much. And what's next is there's bolts that run down this seam right here between the lower fender and the front, and I've got to get those off. There's 3 or 4 of them, and that's next to get. Also on the front of the car, I noticed that there's bolts here, here, and here, right in that grill opening, and there's also one that comes up from the bottom that I saw when I was down there looking around for what else needed to be taken off. So I'm going to get underneath the car and get those. You're not going to be able to see them through there, I don't think, but get those bolts off that connect the front grill to the lower fender, and then I'm going to take these off, and let's see what kind of movement I get on this side after that. All right, so right on this seam right here, connecting the lower fender to the front nose cone, is this piece right here, and it's got looks like pressed in bolts, and you got nuts that you got to take off, 7/16, and you can see that one actually broke, but I got it off, and that was what was holding the at least this side to the and I look at that movement and I got now. So I got some good movement on this side, and I'm going to keep going. All right, so 412 bolts and screws later, and probably about 30 beers and about 2 days, and I finally got this front bumper cover off, and what a pain it was. And looking at it now and seeing the shell where the headlights go in, that piece, if I would have unbolted that piece, it would have been a lot easier. So let me show you in a little bit more detail what I mean. All right, so first off, let me just kind of show you this from the back side, and you can see that there's bolts that hold this thing on all the way around. These are little screws right here, but all the way around the whole thing is held on that way, and there's some tabs right here, and these things were really giving me a fit because they're attached to, and this lip, I'll show you what they're attached to in a second, but this lip right here was over the top of this piece right here. And had I known this was only held on by 4 bolts, I would have just taken that off with it, because I had to kind of pry it over this lip. And that just really made it kind of scary, because I was bending this thing beyond what I think the limits of it were, and I got a few cracks. I think this is the original nose cone. I'm not sure, but it's got some white paint here, and white was the original color of the car, so I do think that this is the original one. All right, so in addition to all these bolt holes, you've got 2 here, 1 there, and then 1 way over here. But I think the biggest lesson learned with this is this lip, again, fit around this piece here. All right, so this piece here was held on by 4 bolts, and I'm sure it was more than that. As I took it apart, it probably came off, but the 4 bolts that remained I didn't take out, because I'm like, hey, this isn't part of the skin that I'm taking off. And you flip this over, you kind of see there's 2 there and 2 there. Now if I took those off, those 4 bolts off, the front nose cone would have came off a lot easier, because again, because of this lip. So this lip was wrapped around that piece, and if I had just undone those 4 bolts, or unbolted those 4 bolts, the whole thing kind of would have came out in one piece. And I didn't do it that way, and like I said, I kind of stretched and bent and pushed the limits of what this thing I think is capable of, without breaking it. So I finally got that off, the front bumper cover, front nose, whatever you want to call it. And what a pain in the you-know-what. I can't believe how many bolts were in that thing, how many weird places the bolts were. And it just, actually when it's off and you're looking at it, you're like, oh, that's pretty straightforward. But when it's on the car, it's pretty challenging to get off. So hopefully I try to do a good job documenting the bolts I took off, and then of that front, that shell that was left there where the headlights sit in. Lesson learned, I didn't have to pry it over that thing. I could have just taken that off and it all would have came off as one piece, but I didn't know. So that's how you learn, and that's how I'm learning with this project. So I'm happy that I've got it done. Literally, it took me quite a while to get this done. I don't even want to tell you how many hours I spent doing this, but it's off. Happy about that, and on to the next step. All right, the next step of the restoration here is to tear this front bumper off, which I don't think will be too terribly difficult, and then get these fenders off. And the fenders are, I don't know, to me they're pretty tricky. I'm going to be very careful with them, but I think having the nose front bumper cover and the front bumper out of the way already kind of puts you ahead of the game, because you already eliminated a lot of the nuts, bolts, screws, whatever that you have to take off. So that's coming up next. All right, really appreciate you guys tuning in and checking out the channel. I'm sure you could sense some of my frustration that I had getting that front bumper cover off. That thing was nothing short of a pain, but mission accomplished. And again, next steps, front bumper, fenders. Stay tuned to the channel. Thanks for watching.